In the remote wilderness of Montana lies the secluded town of Cold Hollow, surrounded by a dense, shadowy forest where tales of fear and mysterious disappearances linger like the fog that cloaks its streets at dusk. The townsfolk live in quiet resignation, avoiding the forest at all costs, as though something unseen watches from the darkness. It was in this eerie setting that Emma, an investigative journalist, arrived, drawn by a string of disappearances. 5 people had vanished in 2 years, leaving only silence and fear behind. At the town's lone cafe, Emma faced resistance and suspicious stares but was approached by Caleb, an elderly recluse who broke the town's code of silence. He shared that the missing people had broken one sacred rule: never enter the forest at night. His words carried a chilling weight, as though an invisible menace loomed nearby. "She already knows you're here," Caleb warned before disappearing, leaving Emma unsettled. Looking toward the forest, Emma spotted something seemingly impossible: a tall, shapeless shadow moving among the trees, defying logic. The church bell echoed through the town, and the distant fog began to stir as if something had awakened and was watching. The bell tolled as Emma dug into the mystery surrounding Cold Hollow's eerie disappearances. In the past 2 years, 5 residents had vanished under similar circumstances. Mundane errands turned into ghostly absences. There were no tracks, no bodies, and no explanations, just the suffocating silence of those who remained. Every attempt to interview the townspeople was met with evasive glances and curt replies, as though words alone could summon the darkness. Desperate for answers, Emma sought out Caleb again. In his cabin on the town's edge, surrounded by carved totems, he shared more of what he knew. The disappearances weren't random. Each victim had been marked. Caleb showed her a torn piece of cloth bearing claw marks too deep and precise to belong to any known animal. "She always leaves signs," he whispered, casting a nervous glance toward the forest. A distant, haunting howl broke the tense silence. Caleb froze, terror etched on his face. Before he could utter another warning, a branch snapped outside, and the surrounding darkness seemed to shift, as if something immense was lurking just beyond the cabin walls. The morning after the strange incident, Emma visited the local library to learn more. Among the dusty shelves, she uncovered journals from Cold Hollow's early settlers in the 19th century. The writings recounted a brutal winter that isolated the town's founders, driving them to desperate acts of survival. One entry by Ezekiel Carter described the harrowing events, including the disappearance and unsettling return of a man named Jacob. When Jacob reappeared days later, his sunken eyes, gray skin, and unnerving smile were not those of the man they once knew. He wasn't human anymore. He was the Wendigo, Ezekiel wrote. The settlers' accounts detailed how Jacob had been transformed. Supposedly possessed by something dwelling in the forest, he became a monstrous, ravenous figure who terrorized the town. Ezekiel described hearing screams at night and feeling a constant presence watching them like a patient predator. One of the final entries carried a dire warning: those who see him never escape. As Emma read, the pages of a nearby book began to flip on their own. A diary lay open to a strange symbol with the words, "He watches, always watches." Her phone buzzed with a call from Caleb, who frantically urged her to leave immediately. Glancing outside, Emma saw a tall, shapeless shadow dart past the window. Shaken, Emma left the library, feeling eyes on her at every step. Back at her inn, she studied the diary she'd found. Amid fragmented symbols and cryptic phrases, one stood out: "He marks the overly curious." Despite her growing fear, Emma felt an irresistible pull toward the forest. That evening, she ventured to the outskirts of town and discovered an abandoned cabin, shrouded in eerie silence. Inside, the air was heavy with rot, and scattered bones littered the floor. Many gnawed in ways that defied explanation. The sound of snapping branches outside jolted her thoughts. Slow, heavy footsteps circled the cabin. Frozen between terror and curiosity, Emma listened to a low, indecipherable whisper that seemed to echo from all directions, carrying a hunger she could feel in her bones. When she finally opened the door, deep claw marks marred the wood outside. Fog surged, enveloping the cabin, and the encroaching darkness felt alive. Whatever was out there was close, too close, and waiting. Still shaken, Emma sought answers about the cabin. During her inquiries, a teenager named Lizzie approached her with a story to share. Away from prying eyes, Lizzie revealed how she and friends had broken the town's rule months earlier. Venturing into the forest at night, they heard an inhuman, almost human-like howl, followed by screams that seemed to come from everywhere. Lizzie described the creature: tall, skeletal, and inhuman, with hollow, empty eyes that seemed to study her. While her friends fled, she froze, unable to move until sheer will drove her to escape. Since then, she'd felt constantly watched. Showing Emma a faint scar on her arm, she claimed it was left by the creature's claws. Lizzie believed the forest didn't just take people. It marked those who dared to challenge it. Before they could continue, a sharp crack came from the trees. Lizzie froze, staring into the forest, and whispered in rising terror, "It's here." A chill ran through Emma as shadows seemed to close in, inching closer between the trees. By dusk, Cold Hollow buzzed with news. Tommy Harris, missing for 6 months, had returned. Found wandering near the forest, he was unrecognizable, pale, gaunt, and with a vacant stare as though something had drained him of life. Emma visited his family's home, where Tommy sat muttering disjointed words. When she approached, he fixed her with hollow eyes and rasped, "She's always hungry." His guttural tone made Emma instinctively step back. Tommy suddenly erupted into eerie laughter, moving awkwardly as if his body were not his own. He walked to the window, gazing into the forest and murmuring in a strange chant. Before anyone could stop him, he bolted into the dark woods, ignoring his family's cries. Emma and others followed, but he vanished, swallowed by the trees. At the forest's edge, Emma felt that familiar, oppressive gaze. In the still night air, a low, dragging sound emerged from the darkness. Heavy breathing, close yet unseen. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma ventured into the forest the next night with her camera. She found enormous, irregular footprints that abruptly disappeared. As she documented the scene, the crack of a branch froze her in place. She scanned the shadows and then saw it. A tall, thin shadow gliding unnaturally among the trees. Its distorted shape and glowing eyes defied reason. Emma crouched, silent, but her camera clicked, breaking the quiet. The creature's head snapped toward her, and the air turned icy. Time seemed to halt as its gaze bore into her. Emma ran, the creature's guttural howl trailing her every step. Reaching the road, she turned back and saw shadows shifting among the trees, patient and watchful. The next morning, Emma reviewed her photos but found them distorted with dark smudges and unrecognizable symbols. Drawn to the town's church, she discovered its doors ajar. Inside, the metallic scent of blood filled the air and symbols painted in dried blood covered the walls. At the center of the floor, a chilling message read, "You have been chosen." Overwhelmed, Emma fled, noticing the symbols now adorned buildings across town, even her car. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You see it now, don't you?" She dropped the phone as a tall, unnatural silhouette appeared in the mist, staring directly at her. That evening, Caleb appeared at Emma's inn, urging her to follow him. He led her to the forest's edge, where townsfolk with torches awaited. Caleb explained they were attempting to contain her, a presence the town had managed to keep at bay for generations with rituals and sacrifices. Emma joined them in a forest clearing encircled by stones marked with ancient symbols. The townsfolk chanted in an unfamiliar tongue, torchlight flickering as though the air itself were alive. The oppressive atmosphere thickened, and Emma felt the weight of an unseen presence. Caleb admitted something had gone wrong. The creature was closer than ever. Before he could say more, snapping branches echoed. The chanting stopped, leaving a suffocating silence. From the trees, a figure emerged, tall, grotesque, and deliberate, as though the ground groaned beneath its weight. Caleb grabbed Emma's arm, trembling. "She doesn't want sacrifices tonight," he whispered. "She wants you." The creature stepped into the clearing, impossibly thin yet exuding monstrous power. Its sunken eyes seemed to devour the light. As it advanced, Emma felt an invisible force paralyze her. The chants resumed, frantic and futile, as the creature let out a deep guttural sound that reverberated through Emma's core. One by one, the torches extinguished, plunging the clearing into suffocating darkness. Emma felt something cold brush her skin as a disembodied voice whispered, "She has seen you. She will not forget." Before she could flee, the forest seemed to pull her into its depths. All went silent. When Emma awoke, she was alone in the cold forest. The stone circle was empty. Caleb, the townsfolk, and the creature were gone. The stillness was deafening, as if nothing had happened. But looking at her hands, Emma saw markings, thin, intricate symbols etched into her skin, the same ones from the church and the cabin walls. Returning to Cold Hollow, Emma found it abandoned. The town stood eerily intact yet void of life. Yet, fog consumed the streets as she recorded the desolation. In the distance, a familiar howl echoed, low and haunting. Emma knew she hadn't escaped. The Wendigo had marked her, and it would always be watching. If you enjoyed this chilling tale and want to uncover more terrifying mysteries, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, if you dare.